Welcome to SAS Visual Analytics on Viya. I'm Linda Jordan, and I'm an instructor at SAS. I've been teaching SAS classes for over 20 years, and for the last 8 years or so, I've been solely dedicated to visual analytics. Visual analytics is a tool that allows for you to analyze very, very large volumes of data very, very quickly. So during this video, I'm going to show you kind of the soup to nuts of visual analytics. How do we get to our data? How can we create interesting visualizations? How we can turn that into an interactive report. So hang tight and we'll just get started. So what is SAS Visual Analytics? Well, Visual Analytics is a web-based product, so all you need is a browser and your web address for Visual Analytics, for the Visual Analytics server. Once you connect, you'll be accessing SAS's high performance analytics. This allows for us to reach out to those very large volumes of data and look for those patterns, trends, and opportunities for us to do a deeper dive into the data. So we start with massive amounts of data. This is what we all struggle with. We have so much data. And what can we do with that data? Well, we can create reports, we can explore the data, we can share those insights. But before we do any of those functions, we need to get the data into visual analytics. So we can import our data. It's quite easy, just a little point and click interface will bring that data right into visual analytics. Behind the scenes, the data is actually going to be stored on a server called CAS. This stands for our Cloud Analytics Services. It's very quick. It is scalable, meaning if you guys have started with maybe a smaller installation and you want to add some machines, that's quite easy to do. It has node-to-node communication. So there is a head node that's in charge, and it will distribute your data equally out among those nodes, the worker nodes. Those worker nodes have a backup. Therefore, there is a fault tolerance. That way, we can make sure that if it would go down, we don't actually lose our data, and it is quite resistant. All of those functionalities are included in our multi-machine installation or the distributed deployment of visual analytics. We can also do a single machine. If you have a single machine installation, then you would not have a distributed deployment, meaning all of the data would reside on a single server instead of multiple machines. So we're talking about Viya. Viya is the platform or the environment that we'll be taking a look at visual analytics through. When we access Viya, we're going to land on the SAS Drive. This is kind of like our home page, and this gives us access to all the other applications that our credentials have capabilities for. So within this class, we're going to focus on visual analytics. Visual analytics is the tool that allows for us to do our data discovery and our interactive reporting. Within visual analytics, you could have a variety of different users. So just depending upon your company's makeup, you might have all of these people, you might have some of these people. For the purposes of our little video, we will take on the role of analyst. Analysts are the primary users of visual analytics. We can have other users as well. So the data scientists may be accessing visual statistics or visual data mining and machine learning through visual analytics. Our data administrator might be using the Data Studio application on Viya, and that allows for them to clean data, make changes to the data, upload data to CAS. Our administrator is in charge of making sure the environment is healthy. So making sure we have the correct access, making sure that the users also have the correct access to the correct tables. So not only access to the application, but also access to the data. And then all of us, including the information consumer, would view reports. So the information consumer's role is that of just viewing reports. Might be our manager, senior management that's just going to look at reports. So I'm going to jump into a demo. Throughout this video, I will have a few slides and then I'll jump into a demo, hopefully to keep you guys hanging on. All right, so let's take a quick look at that SAS Drive. During this demo, I'm going to illustrate how we can sign in and access the SAS Drive. So you do need to have some login credentials. They should be supplied by your organization. I'm going to log in as one of our users today. We have some standard users, and Eric has the credentials for an analyst. So we've just logged into SAS Drive, and I'm going to make sure that my window is fully zoomed. There we go. So this is SAS Drive, and everybody's SAS Drive will be linked to their user or their login credentials. So over in the far right-hand corner, you'll see that I've logged in as Eric. So on his SAS Drive, he has a link to the videos or an option to drive into the videos. If I go in the upper left-hand corner where I have those three horizontal lines and select that, this shows me the Viya applications that Eric has access to. And for the purposes of this class, we're going to be primarily interested in the Explore and Visualize. If we want to start a new report, we would select our Explore and Visualize, and that would take us into Visual Analytics. At the top portion of our SAS Drive, we have this quick access area. And I can drag and drop items here that maybe I'm going to use on a very regular basis. Like potentially I could have a report that I'm using as a template, sort of my starting place for subsequent reports, and I could drop that here in the quick access area. If you would like a little more real estate for the folder structure and the data items in the bottom, we can minimize this. So over in the far right-hand corner, you'll see quick access with the double up arrow. We can select it, and now that section is gone. A couple things about visual analytics that you'll see are common, one of which is the three little dots over in the far right-hand corner, and this is going to be available in a variety of different places. And sometimes it'll say menu, sometimes it'll say options, but basically this is a pretty important icon that you want to get in the habit of looking for. So when I select this, this shows me what my options are on this particular interface. So I can manage the tabs. What are the tabs? Well, the tabs are these items here. Shows me my projects. If I had any reports, they would appear. If I wanted to do some SAS coding, I could do that. I'm going to start with the all over in the left-hand side, just to talk a little bit about the folder structure. So your folder structure at your organization might look different. It probably will. One thing that should be consistent is that you should always have a My folder. The My folder is set up that is linked to your login credentials. And the only other person that could have access to your My folder would be your SAS administrator. So currently, if I select my folder, you can see that I have the videos. I have some SAS videos stored there if I wanted to go back and take a look at any of those. You also have your My Favorites. This is a great place to maybe drop that starter report. So things that you're going to work with a lot. If you've minimized the quick access area, you might want to use the My folders for that. So we're never going to develop SAS code. We're not going to do custom graphs. So I'm going to go ahead and modify these tabs. So I'm going to go back over to my little snowman in the upper right-hand corner, and I am going to select Manage Tabs. So now it shows me all of those tabs, and I'm just going to remove them all. When I do that, the all and the recent are saved. They will never be removed. You can see they have little locks next to them. So they're always going to be there. In addition to all and recent, I'm going to go ahead and select my reports, and I can just move that over. And then maybe I want to go ahead and also select build custom graphs in case I need to do that as well. So now I can select OK, and my tabs will have updated. And so we will have removed a couple of those tabs that we really don't need. From the SAS Drive, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some reports that were created for us that we're going to use throughout the remaining of the class. So I'm going to go into the SAS content. Within SAS content in the public folder, I have a couple global forum reports that have been created. So I'd like to make sure that Eric can see these. So I can just right click, select share, and then I can find someone, and I'm just going to type in my E for Eric. Then I can locate him, and looks like I've already shared it with him. So let's take a look at sharing it with maybe Lynn. So now I've got Lynn, and what do I want to let her do? Can read and edit. So I can select share, and now it means that Lynn has access to this global forum report. Okay, so that's going to wrap up our first section on the SAS Drive. So our next section will be on analyzing our data. So in this demonstration, I'm going to show you how you can make some modifications to the data, and we'll begin analyzing our data. I need to get into Visual Analytics, so I'm going to go to my menu option on the SAS Drive, and Explore and Visualize is what we're looking for. So the first thing we need to do is grab some data. So we'll go to the data icon. And for this, I want to use the customers clean table. So it shows me that I have 21 columns, 951,000 rows. Gives you a quick little glance at that data. We can go there. There's a sampling of it. So this is what I want, and I'm going to select OK. So when I look at the data in the data pane, I have all of my categorical columns, and then I have counts next to those. Those counts are the number of distinct values. So I have 7 different customer types within my 951,000 observations. And again, no distinct counts on my measures. That just wouldn't make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and modify some properties. For our date order was delivered, I'm going to go in, drop down onto the edit properties, and instead of showing this at the day level, so this is being displayed with the month name, the day of the month, and a 4-digit year. That is what date 9 shows us. So I'm going to go in and edit, and I would just like to see the month and the year, no day value. So I'll select the MMMYYYY. That's always a tongue twister. I'll select OK. And I'd also like to shorten the name. That's kind of a very long column name. So I'm going to change this to delivery date. And I'll select enter to accept those changes. Additionally, I'm going to modify the properties for the discount in percent of normal total retail. So when I look at this, the aggregation is sum. So it's totaling up the discount amounts. I don't want that. I want to know the average. So I'm going to go down, select the drop down for the aggregation, and then we'll select average. Also want to change the name here to average discount. And again, enter to accept those changes. I'd also like to modify the name for the date the order was placed by customer. Drop down date order was placed by customer. And we're going to rename this order date and accept that. So now I want to learn a little bit about the data. So before I can really get into analyzing the data, I need to have kind of an idea about what I'm looking at. I'm going to take profit and drag it into the center, and you see I'm still holding my mouse down. It says auto chart. So I've just selected a column and dragged it over into the canvas. By default, because it's a measure, I'm seeing a histogram. When I click on any bar, I can find out the detailed level information. So the majority of my data is residing between $0 and $25. That can't possibly be good for my company. Maybe I'd like to know what percentage of my data. So if I go over to the roles on the right-hand side and select frequency, I have the option to replace that. So I'm going to select frequency percent and then change that. So it told me the number of observations. Now it's telling me the percentage of the data. So I'm at about 65% of my data is $0 to $25. I don't think I'd be very happy. I can also take a look at these values in a table form. If I go over into the upper right-hand corner, I'll see the maximize icon, the double arrows. When I select that, this is showing me the breakdown of the observations, what percentage, and you can see very, very small. And then if I select one, there it's highlighted in that grid. So 22% of my data is between 0 and a negative 25. Again, I could not possibly be happy about that. So let's take a look at profit using another object. You need to restore the size, and then we'll go to the objects and we'll take cross tab, and I'm going to drag that down and release it to the bottom. So what am I interested in here? Well, I'd like to know the profit by the order type. Maybe I can learn something about the data. I want to go ahead and add in my order type as the rows. So I'm going to use the data roles over on the right-hand side. And I'm going to select order type and then select OK to confirm that. So what is this telling me? Well, wow, the majority of my data is in retail sales. And this is just the frequency. We're interested in the profit, so let's swap out frequency for profit. And so this doesn't really surprise me considering the number of observations that we had as retail sale. But I do need to learn a little bit more about this. My company wants to increase catalog and internet sales, so I'm going to need to figure out why the majority of our money is coming from the retail sales. Maybe I'd like to see where it's coming from as well, like what locations. So in the columns, I'm going to select the plus and I'm going to go grab the continent name. So we'll start by just looking at which continent it comes from. Well, Africa's not doing well. We're losing money on our internet sales in Africa. And interestingly, my largest profits are coming from Europe. And the reason that's interesting is my company's based in North America. So we would think that we'd be generating more money in North America. Maybe it'd be nice to have some totals or subtotals here. If I go to the options and I scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see totals and subtotals. I'm going to select totals. I don't really want them to have them in both the rows and the columns. I'm going to select just columns. And maybe I'd like them to stand out a little bit. So we'll select the background color and we'll select the light blue. So I think that's good. That makes those stand out. A lot of times when I create a visualization, I often wonder, hey, I wonder what this would look like in a different visualization. So we can easily go in and change this. If we go to our three little dots or our snowman in the upper right-hand corner of the object, just the object, then I can change my cross tab to, and it recommends a list table, but that's not what I want. I want to see it in a bar chart. Well, because it has two categorical data items, order type and continent name, by default, it creates this lattice columns bar chart. I don't love this, so I'm going to take the order type. I don't want to replace it. I just want to drag it. So I'm going to drag order type from the lattice column row into the group roles and release it. So now this is a more traditional bar chart. I've got my 3 different bars for the 3 different order types by continent name. I'm going to go ahead and give this actual observation a name. If we go to the objects, we can expand objects, and then I might want to give this a name. I'm going to just call it profit by, oh, that's the title. I don't want to do it there, but there we go. I'll just move it up here to the name. Excellent. So I've just named it behind the scenes in case I'm going to end up creating like a PDF. That way the name will be on there. Let's see how this might look as a stacked bar chart. So as I scroll through this, I'm in the bar section now. I could change the direction. I'm going to go down to the grouping style and change it to a stacked bar chart. I'd also like to see the data labels. So I'm going to select data labels. They're quite small, so I'm going to go and just up them a little bit. There we go. Maybe I want to make them bold. I think that looks good. All right, so for this section, we're going to save this. And I'm just going to call this report 1-1 and select save. And then we'll talk a little bit more about analyzing our data. Okay, we're going to continue in analyzing our data. We just did some quick glances at the data, and we want to further analyze it. So coming from the perspective of being part of the marketing team and our responsibility is to increase the profits, we quickly glance at the profits by continent name for the order types. We'd like to continue analyzing the data, but we need to create some new columns. So we'd like to know, are you part of the loyalty membership? And also, which customer group would you fall into? And these items need to be created. So we have some choices when we're creating data items. We can create new calculated data items. We can create custom categories. We can also duplicate a data item. So earlier, I changed the format of order date. I could have duplicated it and kept the original format, and then just changed the format on the duplicated item. We also have some built-in predefined geography data items that we can link to our data. We can build hierarchies. This is just a nesting of the data, and then we can collapse it and use it to drill in. It's a great tool for when you have lots and lots of data. We've got so many derived data items. There are pre-written little routines for us, so something like percent of total is quite popular. We can do aggregated data items, so that's a calculated data item, but it's a little different because this is going to sum up the data before the calculation. So our calculated data items by default would be observation by observation. So we have salary times increase, and every single record is going to go through that calculation and the new value will be written out. Aggregated measures mean that we're going to do some summing, some by group processing first. So we'll sum it up by the country and then do the calculation. In custom categories, we have a couple options. We could use the point and click side to assign it, or we can just use some programming, some if-else logic to go ahead and create our new custom categories. Customer age, though, that's a little trickier. So it's a simple expression. We have our x minus y divided by z, but here we're going to go ahead and use some operators. This might be new to you. The now operator will return the current date and time. And while I want to calculate their age, I don't need the time. So I'm going to use the date part operator to just take the date portion off. Because I'm in visual analytics, I need to ask for this to be used as a number. So we'll use the treat as operator there. So now I've got my basic x and y set up. I'm going to do the calculation, divide it by 365.25 to accommodate for leap years. What gets returned will have several decimal places. And I don't want to round up because if you're 38.7, you don't want to be referred to as 39. So we're going to use the floor, and that will just return the nearest integer. It will round down. And that way, we won't be rounding up any of our customers. In addition to calculating data items, we're also probably going to want to filter the data. And we have some choices here as well. So I can filter the data at the data source level. So as the data source comes in to the data pane, it could be filtered, which means that those items would be updated. We also can create geography data items. Visual Analytics comes with some predefined geography lookups that we can connect to our data. We can create a variety of different graphs doing that. So we've got country names and codes, state and province names, ID codes. We can link it to US postal codes. We can link our data to US state names and abbreviations. If you have something else, but you have the longitude and the latitude, then we can set up a geography data item using that. We can also do regions or polygons by setting up the geographic data provider. So this lets you add in custom polygon shapes. Hierarchies are nesting of information. So here I'm going to nest the month into the quarter, into the year. And then I can drill in to expand that information. So it's just an arrangement of categorical data items. And you want to start at the most detailed and kind of work your way up. Okay, so we're going to do a demo that shows us how we can create some new data items and just continue working with exploring our data. So I've got a couple objects here on this page. I'd like a little more real estate, so I'm just going to select the plus next to page 1, and it'll give me a new page. Now I want to go ahead and create a couple new distinct data items. So on my data pane, I'm going to look for my customer ID, and I'd like to create a new data item that's an aggregated measure that shows me the distinct customer IDs. So I'll right-click on customer ID, select new calculation towards the bottom, and then I'm going to call this number of customers, and it is a distinct count. So I'll select OK. And I basically want to do the same thing on order ID. So it's right-click, new calculation. We're going to call this one number of orders and select OK. So now I have my two new aggregated at the measures, and I want to take a look at those with the order type. So I'll select all three, drag those over, and I should get an auto chart. So it shows me 3 different order types, and then the number of orders and the number of customers. Remember, they're not going to share the x-axis because the values are so different. So if we force this, we would not really see much information about our number of customers because it's so much significantly smaller than our number of orders. Let's go back to the data pane and continue to make some changes. So we have profit, and I'd like to create average profit. So let's duplicate this data item, right-click, and then duplicate. So it automatically makes me this profit one, and then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and make some changes. So let's change the aggregation from sum to average so we get the average profit instead of the total profit. And let's give it a name. We'll call it average profit. Now let's use that. I'm going to go ahead and minimize the properties pane. I would like to take a look at the order total, the average profit by the continent name. And I'm going to drag these over to the right of the existing bar chart. And it makes me a list table. Well, I'd like it to be a bar chart. So I'm going to just use the three little dots in the upper right-hand corner. And we want to change our list table to, and we're going to select bar chart. So here's that columns, the lattice columns, and I'm not loving that. I'm going to go to the roles, and you can see that continent name, oops, I canceled. Continent name is in the lattice columns. I'm just going to drag it up to the group role. So now this is more of the bar chart I was looking for. So I should see my three different catalogs as my y-axis, the average profit on my x-axis, and then a bar for each continent. And we can see Africa here is our one location that we're losing money. I'm just going to go give this a name. I'll go to the options. And then instead of untitled, average profits. And we can also give the object a name. I'm going to give this a little bit more average. Remember, the name we don't see. That's behind the scenes. I can see it over on the left-hand side. If I select the outline, there's that name. And I do like to name my things, especially if I'm going to create a PDF. Those names would go out into the PDF. All right, so our goal in this section was to create new data items. So let's go back to the data pane, and we're now going to do a custom category. So currently, I have this column named loyalty number, and there's two different values. There's zeros and nines, and we want to create a new calculated data item or new custom category so that we see the words yes and no. So let's go to the new data item at the top of that data pane and select custom category. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you name it. I forget this on a regular basis. So we're going to name this loyalty member. And then what do I want it based on? Well, I don't want it based on city name. You can see all of those cities. I'm going to drop down and locate the loyalty number. So I'm going to only have two values here, the zeros and the nines. If they are not part of the membership, it will be the zeros, and I want the word no. So I'm going to type in the value label, no, and then I'm going to drag over the data value that matches. And then down here at the bottom, click or drag here to add a value group. So we also want to do the 9 nines. So I'm going to drag those over and release them on top of that information. And now I'm going to rename value group 1 to say yes. So one more thing that we should point out is if you see these remaining value options at the bottom. So if we got something else in, do we want it to show up as it is? So if there was a typo and somebody typed in 3 nines or they got an 8 in there, do we want it to show as is? Do we want it to show as missing? We've decided to group it into other. So I'm going to leave this set, others good, and over in the far right-hand corner, I will select OK. Now in my data pane, I have this new data item, and it's 2 distinct values. And you can see the icon looks a little different. So this is the icon that's used for creating calculated character or categorical data. So I want to go ahead and duplicate this bar chart, my average profits bar chart. I'm going to select the 3 little dots in the upper right-hand corner, and I'm just going to select duplicate. So now I have 2, and I'm going to stack them. So I'm going to select the move icon and just drag it down so that it kind of splits the space so they're stacked. And now I want to change the roles. So let's select the roles icon on the right-hand side. Instead of order type, we're going to look at the loyalty membership. We still want to look at average profit, but instead of looking at them based on the continent, we're going to go ahead and look at them based on their customer type. So I'm going to replace continent name with customer type name. So here are all of my loyalty members, yes and no, and then the different memberships. I think I might switch these. Let's see what happens. See if we like this better. I think I do. I think I like the customer type name and then the loyalty. So each customer type name will have 2 bars. I do find this a little challenging to read because a lot of the bars are very close to each other. So I find myself kind of tilting my head. Let's go change the direction of this. So we'll go to the options icon, and then I'm going to scroll down into the bar section, and the first thing is direction. So let's change that to a vertical. And now I think this is much easier to see. There's a little bit of a difference. The Orion Club members low activity and the Orion Club Gold members medium activity have less members than the others. The rest of them, the blue's higher. Let's see here. Just barely higher. Remember, if I wanted to look at that data in a data grid, I could expand, so maximize that object. And then we could sort it if we wanted to. And then if we want to go back to the original size, you need to restore it. Let's also give this a name. I'm going to go up to the top. And I'm going to name this, because it's not average profits by order type anymore. It is average profits by loyalty membership and customer type. All right, in continuing to create new data items, let's take a look at creating a new geographic data item. So we'll go to the data icon, and we're going to convert state name to a geography data item. One thing I'd like to point out are the number of distinct values for state name. Currently, there are 272 distinct or different state names. When I hover, it tells me that the name in the data source is state_province. So remember that we are actually working with global data from all around the world. We want to create just US state names. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to change it from state name. Actually, let me undo. Up in the upper right-hand corner is our undo. Sorry, let me go back. Let's change the classification first. So from category, I'm going to select geography. Now I'm going to name it US. State names. And then currently only 1% of the data is being mapped. And that's because it's trying to map it based on the country or region names, and that's not what we're looking at. So let's drop down on the last option and change this to US state names. So my new column is going to be US state names. Let me add my S there. I'm using the built-in lookups. So we've got a handful of different types that come with. These are all of the different geographic lookups that are available. We want to match it to state names. It tells me that 19% of the data got mapped. Now, when I scroll down, it starts to show me those values. And clearly what I'm seeing is non-US data. So I'm going to come back and fix that later, but I'm okay with this at this point. I'm okay with the 19%. So I will select OK. So now it tells me there are 272, but if I tried to use it, I would get the little I, the information that tells me 220 were not mapped. We're going to do the same thing with postal code. So let's drop down, change the classification to geography, call this US postal code. Nothing's mapped because, again, it defaults to the first option, which is country or region names, and I'm looking at US zip codes. Let's get this the correct name. And 57% are now mapped. Again, we're looking at data worldwide, so once we add a filter, we should be good to go. I'll select OK. I would like to create a hierarchy. So remember that hierarchy is a nesting that allows me to drill into the data. I'm going to use the new data item in the top portion of the data pane, new data item. The first thing is a hierarchy. US hierarchy is what I'm going to name this. And then the top level should be the state. When you create a hierarchy, you want it to start with the data item that has the least number of distinct values. Oops, that I did not want. I just want state name and then US zip code. There we go. So I'm going to drill into this. So at first I'll have my US state names and then I can drill into the zip codes. So when you build the hierarchy, you want the item with the least number of distinct values down to the item that is the most detailed. So the most granular should be the bottom level. So for us, this would be our zip codes. I'm going to select OK. Now in the data pane, I have a whole new category called hierarchy. I have a whole new category called geography. So let's fix this situation about the non-US data. We're going to put a data source filter on the customer's clean table. So I'm going to select the icon next to the data source, and I can change the data. I can refresh it, but the thing I want to do is apply a data filter. So here's our data filter window. If you note down in the far right-hand corner, it tells me how many observations I have. In the far left-hand corner, it tells me how many were returned. So I've not done anything yet to filter this. Let's go find our data source. It's a character column called customer country, single click, and now I have a bunch of conditions. This is going to be my filter criteria. So I'm going to select the customer country in And then where it says none selected, I'll select, and I can start to type to limit those values. I don't want to have to scroll all the way to the bottom. So I want this to only pull off those records or observations where the customer country equals the United States. I'm going to select OK. So I said equals, but I use in. The reason that I use in is because I don't have to worry about typing this in correctly. All the way at the bottom of the conditions, there is the equals. The X is in quotes. So if I wanted to do that equals operator, I would select that, and then I would have to type in United States in quotes, and it has to be case sensitive. So I like to use the in because it gave me that drop-down list. And suppose there were multiple iterations of the United States. Maybe somebody put USA, somebody put US, somebody did all lowercase. I could just grab all of those variations. Again, check the far right-hand corner. Our number of input observations. Now we have a filter. Check the far left-hand corner, and what does it tell you? It shows you the number of observations that are being returned. So 232,258 observations had a value of United States for customer country. I'm going to select OK. Now my data updates. Those distinct counts changed quickly. And I have 52 US states, still not perfect, but definitely closer. And if you pop up to the top portion of the data, you'll see that your customer country is equal to 1 and your continent name is equal to 1. So we've changed those because of that filter. They are automatically changed. I'm going to go ahead and use a geomap now. So let's go to our objects and scroll down to the geomap section, and I'm going to use a coordinate map. I will right-click GeoCoordinate, add to new page. So I'm going to create a new page. When I do this, it automatically creates the next page for me. So I was at page 2, so it automatically creates page 3. And then I'm going to go over to the roles and assign the data. I would like to use that hierarchy I created. So I click on the add. I'll select the US hierarchy. So let's scroll over, and all we see is US data, which is what we were wanting to see. We're gonna add in the size as the frequency, so the count, and the color will be profit. So the darker the blue, the higher the profit, the bigger the circle, the more observations there were. So California had the most observations and the highest profit. Note the eye down in the corner. When I hover, it tells me no matches were found for the supplied geography data items PR, and I think there's a blank. And that is why we have 52. I could use a object-based filter to get rid of that if I was interested. Over on the right-hand side, I could filter. So this would just filter this object. And I could filter my United States, say I don't want any missings, and we don't have a match for Puerto Rico. There we go. So now our eye has gone away. All right, let's work with some of these options. Let's give this a name, profit by location. And let's change our marker. So expand coordinate, that's the type of map. Then we'll change our marker to diamonds. We could make them a little bigger if you guys want them. Just show you a couple of the options here. So now they're a little bit bigger. The one thing that I frequently like to do is move my legend because we have more width than we have height of the page. So if I move my legend to the side, and I do this in a lot of objects, then I get a little bit larger area to display because I have more height and it doesn't impact the width for this. So again, the larger the icon, the more observations, the darker the blue, the higher profit. That's really not a surprise. Let's see how things work when we use average profit. Let's go to profit and change it to average. Let's just remove frequency. So when we're no longer looking at the count or the number of observations, it tells a very different story. Let's go back to options. And I'm going to change the gradients down here in the gradients section. It's using this first kind of lighter blue to darker blue. I would actually like a little bit deeper of a gradient. There we go. I just don't think they stood out very well. So Delaware, New Hampshire, Montana. I might need to make that even darker. But sometimes you have to go into custom. There we go. That's pretty dark. Okay, now hopefully they stand out even more. Again, we can maximize this, sort it, and we see New Hampshire, Montana, Oklahoma, Delaware, Wisconsin. Those are our leaders, which is a very different story than when we were looking at it using the counts or the frequencies. So let's restore the size here. And let's take a look at what's going on in Texas. So this is a hierarchy. When I double click on the icon for Texas, it shows me, I'm just zooming in, it shows me all of my zip codes for Texas. And a lot of them are obviously laying on top of each other. Maybe I'm interested in what's going on in the Austin area. So on my map in the upper left-hand corner, I have a pin, and this is the location pin. I'm going to type in Austin. One more time. Come on, there we go. Austin, and it should give me a pop-up of Austin, and I'm going to pick Austin, Texas. So I'm dropping my pin on Austin, Texas. I'd like to see all the zip codes that are within 50 miles of Austin, Texas. So I'm going to expand the pin location, and now I have this option for geographic selection. Let's drill into that, and we want to see the distance. We're using miles, but instead of 5, let's see 50. So all of the zip codes that are within 50 miles of Austin, Texas. And that's what we're seeing here. So the other data is still there. See all of my other little diamonds. Maybe I would like to just look at this data. I can right click, and then you have this option, new filter from selection. And I'm going to select include only selection. So I'm filtering the data to only see those zip codes within 50 miles of Austin, Texas. Note all of those other icons have now been removed. And if we go over to our filters icon, see the selection filter? If I hover, just a sec, there we go. Oops, there we go. All of those 50 zip codes are now included on that filter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we'll take a look at our next section, performing data analysis. Okay, we have one more section to talk about in our analyzing data. And for this section, we're going to focus a little more on the relationship side of things for our shipping data, and then the targeted audience or the focus group side of things for our marketing data. So we want to know, is there any relationship between some of these columns, delivery times, profits, retail price, number of orders, and then is there any standout profits that are going on with our focus groups, places that we might want to target? We have a handful of different visualizations that work well with measured data. So our bubble plot is really cool, and that requires 3 measures at a minimum and 1 category. So when we're doing this, you'll see that it's not mandatory to have a categorical data item, but the visualization will attempt to create a bubble for every observation in your data source. So if you have a very large data source, it's going to attempt to build a lot of bubbles. Most likely, it'll just return an error message. Tree maps are also great when you have a lot of data, especially if you've put it into a hierarchy. This allows for you to look at multiple measures based upon hierarchical data. If you just only have measures, then the correlation matrix is great for that. You can add up to 60 different measures in the correlation matrix to see if there are any relationships. Maybe you found a relationship between 2 measures. You could use a scatter plot or a heat map to further analyze that. We also can add fit lines to our scatter plots and our heat maps. We've got it 4 fit lines, and we have best fit. I usually go with best fit. It goes ahead, looks at all the data in the background, and picks the best fit line and gives you some additional information about it. We'll take a look at that. We can also work with time series data. So if we have some date values, date time values, we can do that. We can also use ordinal data, so data that has a specific order, like small, medium, large, or youngest to oldest. In addition, we can use forecasting. Forecasting is great if you have good historical data. So if you have a lot of input data and you want to use that input data to make some prediction about the future, the analyst can determine the duration and the confidence interval for those predicted values. Visual analytics is going to determine the forecast method. So let's jump into demo and take a look at a few of these. So let's add a new page, and then we'll start with a correlation matrix. I'll go over to the objects, and we'll select correlation matrix and drop that into the center. Now you need to assign some measures to this. So we're going to go pick a few. We want to look at the discount, the cost, the days to deliver, the quantity ordered, the retail price, and we'll select OK. So as I look at this one blue box really stands out. And if I select it, I see that there is a strong relationship here. So the closer to the number 1, positive or negative, indicates a stronger relationship. So maybe I would like to further analyze this. If I right-click on that cell, I can take that object, new object from selection, and put it into a heat map. I'm going to put them side by side. It's just easier for viewing. So we can see that as our cost goes up, so does the retail price. But I would actually like to switch these axes. So if I take my retail price, oops, don't want to replace it. I just want to move it. There you go. So either way, you're looking at this positive relationship. As one goes up, so does the other. Probably not that big of a surprise, right? Let's expand this and get some more information. So here are the actual values. And again, if I select any one value and I scroll through this, it is highlighted. We've seen that. But what we haven't seen is being able to look at some of the analysis. So if I select this retail price cost analysis, it tells me that the linear fit is the best fit. the R-squared value, the correlation, saying that it's a strong linear relationship. Doesn't really surprise me though. So this is just saying as the retail price goes up, so does the cost, and it increases by $1.69. So it's a very interesting relationship between these two measures. Welcome to Lesson 3. Lesson 3 will focus on reporting, interactive reporting. So our goal here is to create a report that other consumers, information consumers, your clients, your colleagues can consume. And while they're consuming this report, they can make some choices about what they're going to see. So we're going to stick with that customer data that we've been working with, but our focus now is to create the report side of things. We're no longer analyzing the data. Now we want to generate a report that can be used to identify those customers that maybe would be appropriate for our marketing campaign. And in doing so, we want to make this look a little bit nicer. So we'll fix some titles and labels and add some coloring in. Within the report, we've got some things that we want to keep in mind. We want our report to be organized, so we'll use multiple pages. We want it to be easy to navigate. So we're going to go ahead and add some instructions. We've got lots of different tools that we can implement. We can use prompts and ranks and filters. And we also want to make it attractive. So we're going to focus on some colors and styles. When you're creating the report, you really want to think about the audience that's going to be consuming the report. So you want the report to tell a story, and you want that story to be easily understandable. So you want to pick the most basic or simplest graph possible to tell your story. I always say just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that truly applies to reporting. We've got lots of fancy different graphs, but if a bar chart can tell me the story, let's just use it. We want to limit the number of objects on any given page and limit the number of pages in your report. If your report is getting up to 7 or 8 pages, you might want to think about creating a second report and then just linking those. And we'll talk about linking reports and pages and even a URL if you're interested. So we do have a lot of different objects that we would focus on when we're reporting. So word clouds are very popular. The donut or pie chart is also very popular. You want to be careful when you're using some objects because certain objects, you really need to think about the type of data that it's going to be deploying. So if we take a look at our pie chart or our donut chart here, you can see that the orange and the purple are quite close together, or the yellow and the purple. And I can tell that the catalog sale is larger than the internet sale, but when you're using a donut or pie chart, you really want to make sure that it's demonstrating or displaying values that are very far apart, so not close values. It's difficult to always be able to tell the difference in the slices of a pie. The same is true for the word cloud. When I look at that and see Madrid and London, I know Madrid is a little bit larger, but if I'm quickly glancing at this, maybe not. So you want to make sure that the objects that you select tell the story. One of my favorite objects are our dual axes. This is great when you have measures that just don't play well with one y-axis. This gives me two y-axes and allows me to display values with a different series of ranges. So one of the examples is earlier we saw the total orders and the total customers. That would be perfect for a dual axes bar chart. So let's take a look at using these. So we're back in Explore and Visualize, and we want to start with our demo VAV report. So I'm just going to double click to select it. And let's start by modifying some of the settings. So if I go all the way over in the far right-hand corner under the E, that's our login, I can go into settings. And then from settings, I'm going to go to the general under the SAS Visual Analytics. And then I want to scroll down and look for the title section. And here it says automatic title. I want to change this to custom title. And so that's all I really want to do here. I just want to be able to add my own titles. So I'll select Close. I'm going to start with a pie chart. So let's go to our objects on the left-hand side and locate our pie chart. We're going to drag it over and release it. And then we need to assign some data. So we'll go to the roles icon. And for the category, the different slices of the pie, that's going to be driven on my customer type name. Note, there's 7 distinct customer types, so I should have 7 slices of the pie. And right now, it's using frequency as our measure. So let's change this to number of orders. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm immediately noting that the green and the orange and maybe even the teal blue are really close together. So maybe this isn't the best use of the data. So we can change this if we click on our 3 little dots, our snowman in the upper right-hand corner. We can go in and change our pie chart too. So maybe a bar chart would be the best object, and you can see that's actually the recommended object. And while I'm working through this, maybe I've decided that the orientation of this would be better served as a vertical bar chart. I think that's the best representation of the data. Let's go ahead and give it a title. So in the upper left-hand corner where it says Untitled, I'm just going to double click and type in number of orders by customer type. I like to center them, and let's make it look a little bit better. We'll bold it and modify the text color. There we go. Oops, typo. Much better. We might also want to give this bar chart a name, just in case we're working with multiple bar charts. There we go. That way we can identify this particular one. Right, so we're going to go and add another bar chart. Let's go to our objects. And we're going to go ahead and grab the bar chart and drag it to the right. And let's go to our roles. So for this, I would like to have order month be my category. Instead of frequency, I would like to look at profit. And then we're going to look at the number of orders. And this is going to cause the axes to separate, and I'll have one for the profit and one for the number of orders. I want to go ahead and use my dual axes bar chart. So let's go to our little snowman, the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, change our bar chart to, and then I'm going to go to the dual axes bar chart. Much better. So quick glance at this. Look at my order months. I go December, June, January. So they're in descending frequency. I want to go ahead and modify that. I'm just going to right click in the center of the bar chart, and I'm going to select the sort. And instead of it being sorted in descending frequency by profit, I would like to change it to being sorted in ascending frequency by order of month. And now we start with January and end with December. Let's go ahead and name this as well. We'll go to the options. And let's give this a name. And we'll also change the title. We can change the title by double-clicking inside the graph, or we can use the side pane. Also, as I look at this, I don't think I need to have the label for order month. So let's go down and clear that label. There we go. Also, I think I would like to bold this, center it, and also change it. There we go. Kind of matches the other one. Because now that we're in the report side of things, we really want to make this visually appealing. So I'm good. At this point, I'm going to save this. All right, so now that we have our basic report set, we want to add in some pieces that will make this a little more interactive. Okay, so in this section, we're going to take a look at creating interactive reports. We want to build reports that our business consumer, our client, our colleague, our boss has the ability to navigate through and make some decisions on what they're seeing. So we have a variety of different tools that we can use to make our report interactive. We're going to create a multi-page report and add in some prompts or selections so they can decide what they want to see. We're also going to set the user or viewer's customization level. This allows the viewer to either make just very basic, simple edits. They can do comprehensive edits to the report, or they could even swap out the data that's being used, the columns, the data items that are being changed or used in the report. So we have 3 different levels of that viewer customization. Again, simple allows for them to make changes that wouldn't modify or make any difference in the original report. And then we have comprehensive, and that way they can alter the report. It'll make some changes, but not to the actual data. And then data edits allow for them to change the data for the objects. So I could change the data assignments, I could change filters, I could change ranks. Reports with multiple pages are very useful because it gives us a bit more real estate. So I don't want to crowd a page. I want to have my pages focus on a single idea, limit the number of objects. In the report itself, we want to limit the number of pages. We do have this ability to use a hidden page, and that would be a page that does not appear to the viewer unless it has been kind of selected or opened. And basically what we would do here is we would link this to an object, and then when the user makes a selection in the object, that particular page would open. It's very useful to hold additional graphs or even detailed level data. Filtering data comes in a variety of different ways. We saw a data source filter earlier. Now we're going to talk about filtering on the report side. So we can set up prompts, which are control objects that allow the viewer to make the selection. So maybe it's a button bar or it's a range slider. We can also set up actions between objects so that when I make a selection in one object, it could update subsequent objects. Those are actions. And then finally, we could do links. So links are when I make a selection, it takes me somewhere else. So does it take me to another page? Does it take me to a website? Does it take me to another report? Lots of choices there. We're going to drive these interactions through control objects. So on the left-hand side, you see the list control. That's the only object that allows for multiple selections. The range slider is also unique because that would be used for dates or measures. Otherwise, the majority of our objects are going to be used on categorical data. And you want to ask yourself, what is the best way to display these values? Button bars are great if you just have a few distinct values. Text input is great if you've got lots of values, so hundreds, thousands of distinct values. You'd want to use a text input for that. And then kind of the in-between is the drop down. So this is completely subjective. Do you think in a drop-down list you'd want more than 15, more than 25? So you can decide how many you think that this is appropriate for. If you have too many distinct values, then you want to use text input. We're going to talk a little bit about report and page prompts. This is going to control the way the report looks. You can control it at the report level, which is the most comprehensive, or you can control it at the page level. So this little sample here has a button bar at the top and a drop down. The button bar and the drop down are at the report level. So this means that everything in my report, even if I have multiple pages, will be filtered for just Europe and just plush toy items. Then as we come down into the report itself, we have some more control objects. We have a range slider, we have a list control, and we have text input. These are within the body of the report, so this is only going to impact what I have linked it to or set it up to work with. So you can see that when I select Europe, I'm only given European cities to work with. And that when I've selected plush, I only have plush toys to work with. Actions happen between objects. So here I have a few objects and I've linked them. When you do a linking, it means that when you make a selection in one object, it's going to highlight that value in subsequent objects. So it shows you all your data, it just highlights that value. Filtering, though, that's the one you're probably more familiar with. When I make a selection on the filter side, it's going to limit what I see in all the other objects. When we set up actions on the page, we can do this using the Actions tab on the right-hand side. Here I've selected Europe. Europe is then highlighted in my geomap. Then when I select it in the geomap, it's then limiting the output in both the bar and the list table. Then when I select it in the bar, it highlights it in the list table. Let's take a look at this. Europe. There we go. We're only seeing European countries. Select Italy. Italy then highlights, filters our bar chart, filters our list table. So now we're only seeing observations from Italy. And then when we make a selection in the clothes and shoes category on the bar chart, it's highlighting that observation or that value in my list table. All right, so let's jump over into demo and take a look at this. Okay, so we're back in our report, our demo VAV, and we're going to go ahead and first modify the user customization. So how much of my report am I going to let my users change? I need to come over to the far right-hand side and I'll go to Options. And note, I want to be on Options for the report. If I have selected an object, then the options are just for this object. I can easily select the drop down and move to the report. So now I've got the options for the report. And then we're going to scroll down and you should see viewer customization. And then what's the capability level? So right now they're set to comprehensive edits. We're going to say, you know what, we'll let them change the data. So we're going to move these options up to data edits. And that way, if our user wants to use some different columns in the report that we've created, they can. All right. Now I'm going to go add a second page. So we'll just click the plus next to page 1. And let's give these names. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to name this delivery analysis. And then I'm going to right click on page 1 and I'm going to rename that as well, customer analysis. And I'm going to go ahead and move this to page 2. So I'm going to right click in the center of the graph and you can see move to, and then I'm going to move it to the delivery analysis page. I could create a new page, I could move it around on the existing page, but I want to move it to my delivery analysis page. And I'm going to add a bubble plot. So let's go to our objects and I'm going to select the bubble plot and I'm going to put that on the left-hand side of the canvas. Now we need to assign some data to it. So I previously have mentioned that when you're doing a bubble plot, you need to make sure that you have some column that is grouping the data. Otherwise, it will attempt to make a bubble for every single observation. So if I have 1,000,000 records, it's going to try to build a million bubbles, and it cannot do that. So you'll get an error message. So I'm going to start by doing the grouping. I'm going to select my group, and I want to group it by the city name, but take a quick peek at that. We have 4,500 unique city names. That's a bit of an issue because I'm not going to be able to build 4,500 bubbles. So we'll walk through this and then we'll talk about how we can make some changes. So we'll go and add our days to deliver, our number of orders, and then of course profit. We're always interested in profit. You can see it's working because at this point it's trying to build all of those bubbles, and that's just crazy. That's not something that is very useful. So we're going to go ahead and rank this so that we can look at the top 10 cities. Over on the far right-hand side, my very last icon is rank. So we have to give this a second. There we go. Then we'll go to our rank. We would like to add a new rank. Oops. Select new rank. And I do want to rank it on city name. And I do want the top 10, but I don't want them based upon days to deliver. I want it based upon number of orders. So there we go. We have our top 10 cities based upon the number of orders. And wow, Brooklyn is way up there. I'd like to look at this over the years. So I'm going to go ahead and add in another column to this. If I keep scrolling down to the bottom, I can add in a column for animation. So I'm going to click my plus add under animation, and I would like to animate this by order month. So now I have a little play button at the bottom, and when I click play, I can watch the bubbles, how they move over the year. So we could pause it. I could say, hey, you know what, I'm really interested in Brooklyn, and that's Brooklyn's history. I can go back to playing it, and we can see how everybody else compares to Brooklyn. If I just want to clear this, I just need to click into some white space and it will clear. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name. And let's give it a title. We're going to call this Top 10 Cities And while we're here, we'll bold, center, and pick our blue. There we go. That way they match. Let's just take a peek at this as a viewer. So up to this point, we've been looking at our reports from the designer's perspective. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to click on my three little dots, my snowman in the far upper right corner. So this is report level options. And I'm going to view the report. So now I'm in viewer. It doesn't really look that different, except that I no longer have those side panes. So this is what the viewer would see. And remember, we set our customization level to allow our users to make data edits. So let's just right click on the dual axes and you can see I can replace data. So maybe I want to replace the number of orders, and then it pops up and shows me all of my other options. And we can say days to deliver. So this is a little weird number over here, isn't it? Because this days to deliver is the total. So this is adding up all of our days to deliver. So that might not be the best option. Look at the number of customers. There we go. So this is what the viewer customization allows. And we have the little back button. So if we want to keep going back to our original, we can easily do that. Okay, let's go back into edit mode. So we will go upper right-hand corner, report options, grab the snowman, and select edit report. Let's take a look at adding a page prompt. We'll select the customer analysis page, and then I'm going to add in a page prompt. In order for me to do that, I need to expand the area for that. And we find that in the options on the tab. So the three little dots on the tab allow for us to expand our page controls. Now I can drop in a page prompt here. So I'd like to see the order type. I'm going to go to the objects and I'm going to pick a button bar. And then I'm going to add some data to it. Order type. So order type has 3 unique values, so that's going to work out perfect for a button bar. Let's go ahead and give this a name. This is going to be the order type selector. And then I want to give it a title, and I'm going to name it. I'm going to give instructions to my viewer. So now when they make a selection, the report should update. The majority of our data is now being displayed in our first column. You can move around and see how catalog does, retail. And I'm going to go ahead and add a tree map. So let's go to our options and let's locate a tree map. And we're going to drop that to the right of our bar chart. We created a hierarchy earlier. I'm going to add that here. So the US hierarchy. And then let's take a look. We'll leave the size, the count, or the frequency, but let's change this to our average profit. So now we can see the average profit by state for retail sales. So let's see how it looks for catalog sales. Very different. Let's go back to our tree map and go to the options. And let's give this a title. So now I can drill into any given state. Let's see, I'm going to modify the gradient as well. I'd like it to be a little darker blue. There we go. So maybe even a tad darker. Very nice. Okay, so now if I really want to see, I can hover and it says South Dakota. If I double click on it, it then shows me the zip codes within South Dakota. Above the tree map, I have this little breadcrumb and I can make the selection to return to the top level. I also, don't forget, we have the maximize option that'll show me the data in a grid format. So maybe if I want to sort it by average profit, I could do that as well. And it does show us that South Dakota and Delaware, which are these two little states over here, do have the highest profit, and they're quite low in frequency. And this is based on catalog sale. If I want to clear this, let's return to its original size and click catalog, and that will return to its original sizing, or return all of the data rather. So let's go over to that delivery analysis page and add in some actions. I would like to add a drop-down list control to the canvas. So not in the page prompt area. I'm not going to expand my page controls. I'm going to put this in the top portion of my report. Maybe. There we go. Just being a little picky. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to assign the city name to it. So let's go to the roles and we'll go to our category and I'm going to assign city name to that. So I get this little eye saying, hey, that's a lot of data because it's not using this top 10 ranking. I need to go in and add that. So let's go to our ranks and we'll do city name, top 10, number of orders. So now it should only be showing me the top 10 city names. I want to set up some actions. So my goal here is, say I pick Chicago, I want my bar chart to update to just show me Chicago, and then I want Chicago, which happens to be my purple bubble, to be highlighted. So we're going to go over to the actions icon on the right-hand side, and then we're going to select our order by month. And what happens is it filters it by default. See our little filter icon? I'm going to drop down here and I'm going to change it to a linked selection. So I should get all 10, but Chicago should be the highlighted or trailed bubble. And it is. Now I do want it to filter on the dual axes bar chart. There we go. So let's test this. Let's pick another city. I'm going to go where it's nice and warm and hopefully sunny. We'll go to Miami. And there we get highlighted Miami. I want to save this. And then let's just pop over quickly into our view mode. And we can take a look, again, navigating around. There's our retail sale. Let's look for all the retail sales. Looks like Oklahoma is a big one. And those are all of our zip codes within Oklahoma. We have two that don't have a lot of frequency, but they do have very high average profits. And again, click the retail, it will clear. And go to the delivery analysis. What happens when I pick, we'll go to San Antonio. And then we get San Antonio highlighted. Okay, I like to start and finish with the SAS Drive, so I'm just going to return to the Share and Collaborate. This is my SAS Drive. It'll show me my recent files. And again, we could set favorites. We could open up that quick access area. And that really wraps up our section on reporting.